We are back. It is the Fight Season podcast. It's me, Jesse Rowe, with Inside Fighting. Today's episode, we discuss Nate Diaz suing Fanmio and promoter Solomon Engel, claiming he is owed $9 million from his fight versus Jorge Masvidal. Jon Anik tells Inside Fighting he views Tom Aspinall's interim title defense at UFC 304 as an undisputed title defense and believes there to be two undisputed heavyweight champions at the moment. Jon Jones is charged with 2 misdemeanors stemming from an alleged altercation with a drug testing agent back on March 30th, which Jones has pled not guilty. And a French Canadian UFC broadcast supposedly leaks UFC plans for their fight card at the Sphere, claiming Ilia Topuria fight Max Holloway, along with Sean O'Malley fighting Merab, and Conor McGregor did his introductory press conference for BKFC. But first, I'm joined by Adam Fishkin. Adam, how are you? Welcome
Doing
back.
well, brother. Doing well. Appreciate the rundown. I think it's nice to end the episodes like that.
I feel like I'm
doing good.
like Walter Cronkite, or like I'm no, what's his name on CNN? Feel like God, what's that guy's name on CNN? I'm like blanking on his name right now.
I don't know. You're asking the Canadian. I can't help you here.
That's true. I am. Yeah, Chris Cuomo. I guess he got fired. Jake Tapper. That's what I'm thinking. I'm like Jake Tapper here for Inside Fighting.
Yeah.
But yeah, I guess let's just go right into it, because this was the story that I was most excited to talk about. I made a TikTok about it. There's some funny elements to it. There's some not so funny elements to it, but Nate Diaz is suing Fanmio after his fight versus Jorge Masvidal for $9 million. This sort of caught everybody off guard, because obviously we hear about this all the time with, Dana White has, he has lamented boxing promoters for a long time about how shady they can be. Fanmio, though, is not a typical boxing promoter. They did promote the Floyd Mayweather versus Logan Paul fight, I believe, but typically they're not in the boxing space. But the lawsuit was filed with TMZ, where he claims he hasn't been paid 90% of his agreed upon purse, and that Engel supposedly cannot, or according to Diaz's camp, Engel cannot pay the money because of the losses that he took on the fight, but also because he's worried that his wife will divorce him if he ends up paying Diaz the money. Adam, I don't even know where to begin with this. What was your first thought on it when you heard it?
My first thought was, how does this keep happening? I feel like it's not the first time we've seen kind of purse disputes from these kind of celebrity boxing events, right? Obviously, these are two well-renowned fighters, but the type of event that they put on is along those lines, right? But yeah, it seems weird because I think that also came out that Fanmio responded saying, yes, Nate Diaz has filed the lawsuit, but there was no breach of contract.
Yeah.
So it's where's the confusion coming from? Because for those who don't know, aside from Inside Fighting, I do run my own music festival, and these guys are talking millions of dollars. I'm talking hundreds of thousands. So it's different. I understand, but there's still contracts involved. And with these types of things, it's if an event hits this amount, you will get paid this amount. If an event hits, if the event does this well, you'll get paid more, right? So it's kind of the bonuses based on pay-per-views, based on attendance and whatnot. And it's where's where are they coming? How does Nate believe he's owed $9 million and the other guys are no, that we did nothing wrong, So
Right.
Someone screwed up somewhere, but the question is who's right. But pay our boy Nate. What's going on?
We'll get back to the video in just a second, but I got to tell you about the Open Championship coming up and how we've partnered up with DraftKings to bring you guys an incredible offer. I know what you guys are thinking. What does fighting and golf have to do with each other? A lot. Golf is not a team sport, neither is fighting. It's every man for himself, last man left standing, and normally the guy who takes the least amount of damage is the one who wins. So right now, new DraftKings customers who go download the DraftKings Sportsbook app, bet $5 on the Open Championship, get $150 in bonus bets instantly with promo code INSIDEFIGHTING. And if sports betting is not available in your state, it's not a big deal. You can always download DraftKings Daily Fantasy Sports. Get in on the fun there. Once again, new customers who download the DraftKings Sportsbook app, bet $5 on the Open Championship, get $150 in bonus bets instantly with promo code INSIDEFIGHTING. Yeah, so in this Fanmio statement, they did say that everything was settled, that he was that this Fanmio statement's interesting because it says Nate Diaz has already been paid 7 figures, right? That is very specifically said. He's already been paid 7 figures, which is like Nate's not disputing that because they were paid 1 million up front and then were promised 9 million additionally. It was like $1 million, almost like a signing bonus, like to take the fight, and then 10 million or 9 million additionally to complete the $10 million. So like, yeah, if you're paid 1 million, then yes, you've been paid 7 figures. But the question isn't that. The question is, was there a contract signed by both parties saying that this would be paid, or was it contingent upon certain revenue, certain gate sales, certain pay-per-view sales, those sorts of things? We don't know. We're not privy to that information. But they do. He did mention, and Solomon Engel did mention in his statement, that it was damaging to his family. But if you're telling Nate Diaz, if that actually happened, you're telling Nate Diaz that you're worried your wife is going to divorce you. I mean, it's like, look, I feel bad for you, but that's not really, I don't see how that's Nate's problem personally.
Nobody gives a shit, dude. At the end of the day, Nate said, I'm going to come fight. He came and did his part. You said, I'm going to put on the event. And you, as a business owner, you take on all the risk, but you also take on all the reward, right? Nate's earnings were capped. It was yours that were uncapped, right? If the event did incredible and they made $100 million, Nate would have got none of that. You would have gotten the whole 100 million, right? So like, it's part of doing business. Who gives a shit that your wife's going to divorce you? Like, that's, again, fully on you. Whoever is part of your team had put together a bad plan that was clearly unachievable based on what they're saying. And that's why they can't pay the fighters. But it's part of business, man. You sometimes, like, if it bankrupts them, it bankrupts them, you know, but you should have taken on the event if it was that likely to happen, right? So Nate, we're not lawyers, but from the outside perspective, Nate's got to get paid.
The interesting thing about it is that it was actually a very successful event in terms of ticket sales. It was pretty full. Like it was actually a sellout, I believe, or no, it was close to a sellout. There was a lot of people in the crowd. It was a crazy crowd. I think the problem that they had is that apparently they didn't sell their higher price tickets. Like they sold all of their like $25 and $50 tickets. Those maxed out, those sold out, but they had trouble selling some of like the $3,500 ringside seats. I guess some of those, they only sold like a few of those. So that's a problem with how they, they do rely on the high profile people coming in who can spend a lot of money and sitting ringside.
Yeah,
so they had trouble
it's
with
kind of
those.
it's kind of like a common rule, and I think in life, well, business for sure, it's like 80% of your business is going to come from like 20% of the people.
Exactly.
Right. So I guess they couldn't get those 20% of the people to cover that 80% of what they needed.
It's not Nate's job to get those people to show up,
No. I mean, partially, but when you're working with Nate, he's going to do whatever the fuck he wants.
Yeah. Nate did put out a tweet, by the way, saying, just for the record, I ain't suing anybody. So I don't know what that means. Maybe he's not the one who pushed it. Might be his team. Again, we don't know. There is some speculation here, but there was a lawsuit filed in Miami, or I believe it was in Miami. I don't actually know why it was in Miami because the fight took place in LA, but that's what the story said. It was in the Miami appellate court or something like that. So
could be, but no, it makes sense that Nate wasn't the one to sue. Like typically the management fee is anywhere between 10 and 20%, right? Let's say it's 5% even.
Yeah.
But if it was like, whatever, let's say if it was 20%, that's 2 million, right? So Nate's team is owed 2 million and Nate's like, dude, I didn't get paid. Why would I give you 2 mil? So he's not the one suing. The team might be saying, hey, we need Nate to collect his money so we can collect ours. Right.
Yeah. No, it's true. It does open up the conversation about, this is just obviously like the standard part of boxing promotion and how shady of a business is that it can be, as I mentioned before. I mean, this isn't uncommon for companies that step into boxing promotion that aren't traditional boxing promoters. I know that Triller had major liquidity issues from putting on multiple events. They've actually since merged. They literally just merged with a Hong Kong based company called Agba. They got like a $1.4 billion influx of capital or something like that. And now they are in partnership with BKFC. So, but that was a long journey for them to get to where they are now. I mean, there was a point where there was concern that Triller was just going to go under. So for Fanmio, this isn't all that uncommon. And yeah, maybe just stick to the boxing promoters from now on. This business isn't for everybody, man.
No, and especially when you like Fanmio, they came in hot. They're like, we're gonna put on a massive event. We're gonna have Nate Diaz and Jorge Masvidal headline it. We're promising Nate 10 million. I don't know. We haven't heard anything about Jorge, so I wonder if Jorge got paid or what
That's what I
his
saw in the
deal is.
comments on our on our
Yeah,
Instagram. It's like sounds like Jorge got paid.
yeah. So I don't know what happened there, but it's like you go in. Most people like work their way up, right? Like you do a small event, you do a bigger event, you do a bigger event, and then you do like your biggest event. But a
Yeah.
lot of these like companies are coming in like, we're gonna put on the biggest event possible, and it's like, well, it's a lot harder than you think, and you're probably gonna lose money doing so.
Yeah. Truthfully, Nate's also a bigger draw than Jorge, so it wouldn't be surprised to me that Nate got a bigger payday.
And it could have been
Uh,
because he won too, right? Like they might just owe Nate more money because he won that fight and he gets a bigger
possible.
split because of that. Who knows?
But yeah, this isn't this heard about this a bunch from like even like Devin Haney and Ryan Garcia claimed after like a certain amount of time that they hadn't been paid yet for their fight. Now, who knows if that was because they were tied up, there was issues with Ryan's drug test and stuff like that. I don't know. I don't know what the logistics of that are, but yeah, I mean, look, obviously there's a whole discussion about fighter pay with the UFC, but at the very least fighters do get paid. Where if they're, if there's a contract in place where you're not getting paid, that's a problem. But we'll see what happens. We will update you when we know more.
Yeah.
We brought on a new reporter named Mike Owens, and he's been doing a great job. And I want to talk about this interview that he got with Jon Anik, UFC commentator. He kind of caused a little bit of a fuss with a comment that he made in an interview with us, where when he was talking about the heavyweight division, he brought up how Tom Aspinall is fighting for the interim. He's defending his interim belt at UFC 304 against Curtis Blades. Jon Anik says that he views that as an undisputed title defense and that there are two undisputed heavyweight champions right now, Tom Aspinall and Jon Jones.
I consider there to be two undisputed UFC heavyweight champions right now. And Tom Aspinall is one of them. So he's defending his undisputed title as far as I'm concerned. And for those that have the archaic philosophy, maybe that if a champion doesn't defend their belt at least one time, then they are not the champion. I mean, Alex Pineda never defended his UFC middleweight champion. Nobody would dispute that he wasn't the middleweight king. But if Tom Aspinall defends the interim championship, as far as I'm concerned, that is an undisputed championship title defense.
This has been a sort of a divisive issue amongst fans who feel like Jon Jones should be stripped of the belt because of his inactivity, because he was injured. Jon Jones hasn't fought in 500 days, by the way. So Tom Aspinall, this will be his second fight in that time since Jon Jones has beaten Cyril Gane to become heavyweight champion. What are your thoughts on that? Do you view the heavyweight division as having two undisputed championships right now, or do you think that Jon Anik kind of missed the mark with this take?
It's difficult because I think what's it called? I think that if it brings up the question, like if Curtis Blades wins, is he like the undisputed champ or is he like an interim champ?
That's exactly the problem.
Yeah, I understand John's perspective though, like Jon Anik's perspective, where it's if you won the interim belt, traditionally you'd fight the undisputed champ next, right? So whoever like should be the title holder. In this case, Jon Jones. Not the case here. So it's a very unique situation that doesn't happen often. But I think I do agree with the fact that like if Tom Aspinall wins, it is an undisputed title defense. He's the current interim champ, and you don't really want to have an interim title defense. I think it's a proper title defense. I think it's undisputed. I think if Curtis Blades does win, he just becomes the interim champion. Reason being is because he hasn't won the interim championship yet, right? So he doesn't become the undisputed champ. But yeah, Jon Jones not fighting for 500 days plus, like, dude, just let go of the title. It's also like him fighting Stipe at the same time shouldn't be an undisputed title defense because Stipe doesn't deserve the title fight, right? So it's like, just strip him of it, let him have, or Jon should just give it up. I don't even think he should be stripped of it. Like out of respect for him being the GOAT, Jon should just realize, hey, I'll just give it up, whatever. I'm not fighting anytime soon. Fight Stipe, have that fight you want, and then go fight the champ and win the belt back. And I think if he does that and wins the belt back, it just like cements him even further in like that GOAT debate, right? So
yeah, I mean, Tom is sort of taking a big risk here by taking this fight, because if he loses, then he sort of has to go back to like maybe winning another fight before he even gets it. Let's see, even if Jon Jones retires after beating Stipe, let's say, he might not even get a chance to fight him because he might have to fight somebody else just to get a title shot again. This is a big risk. I agree with what you're saying about how that it's that because he shouldn't even be because he's defending an interim belt, he should essentially be fighting for the undisputed championship right now. That's what this fight should be. I also wonder, is this Jon Anik's sort of way of saying that he thinks Jon Jones should be stripped? When I heard him talking about it, it was like it was sort of his like company man, like walking a fine line of like saying Jon Jones should be stripped without saying Jon Jones should be stripped.
For sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that was my takeaway from it, but I'm not there to say Jon Jones should be stripped just because he's like the GOAT and he got injured. It wasn't his fault he got injured, but like,
of course, and nobody disputes that. It's just like, dude,
Yeah.
if you're not gonna fight in 500 days and coming up to like 2 years, just like you should just like willingly want to do that, just like as a man of the sport, like being a good sport in a sense, or
yeah.
well, because Jon would expect that of anyone else who's been inactive for 500 days, you'd assume.
Yeah, and then he would get an immediate title shot against Aspinall,
whenever he
no
wants.
question about it.
Yeah.
Yeah. I guess it's like they just probably really want to make that. I think this is just a fight that they kind of want to make because like they want Jon Jones to go out on top because he's the greatest ever. I personally don't think Jon's ever going to fight Tom Aspinall. I really don't. Randy Couture. Mike Owens also got an interview with Randy Couture, former heavyweight champion, who says he believes that Jon Jones will fight Tom Aspinall. I disagree with that. I don't think it's going to happen.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I guess we'll see what happens, but it just feels like one of those situations where, it's just like in literally any other sport. If you're active and you're considered one of the GOATs while you're active, you kind of make your own rules, and you kind of do what you want. And it's fair game because there's very few people like you, maybe one or two other people, right? So
just like if Messi gets injures his ankle in the Copa America final, he's still the GOAT, even though he didn't help the team win. You know what I mean?
Exactly. It's all about mentality, baby.
Yeah. Speaking of Jon Jones, he was charged with 2 misdemeanors. We can keep this part brief because I don't want to go too deep into this, but he was charged with 2 misdemeanors stemming back to his altercation with a drug testing agent back in March 30th, where the drug testing agent alleges he got physical and close to violent with the agents who were there to get drug samples from Jones. Jones is facing a penalty that could land him into jail for less than a year. I'm not sure exactly what that means, but that's what the report says. And he's facing a $500 petty fine misdemeanor or a $1,000 full misdemeanor fine. He has pled not guilty, and the judge informed him that while on release, he cannot break any laws, possess any firearms, dangerous weapons, consume alcohol, or take illegal drugs. Not sure what you have to say about this, but all I have to say is I hope that Jon is well and that we can get that fight so that because he is a legend, and I don't want to see him. I don't want to see this happen anymore, Adam. I just want to see him.
I agree. I think this is like probably the only time where I'm on like team Jones here. You know, I said it originally, I think when we did a fight season episode when like this news came out, not about the fine, but about like the drug testing agents coming to Jon's house or whatever. And like the whole like kind of conflict that arose there. And I was team Jones. I was like, look, he explained the situation. I don't quote me on this, but I believe it was like his brother's birthday and they were celebrating the night before and he was drinking and whatever, right? And he was like, I don't want to deal with you guys right now. He's like, I'm injured. I just finished celebrating. I haven't gone to bed yet. I am going to bed right now. Come back another time. They didn't want to leave because they're trying to do their job. So I understand that perspective as well. But I feel like athletes are people too. And sometimes those lines get blurred and this was an exact situation of that. So I think like the fines are stupid. Like if you're going to fine, like don't fine someone $500, $1,000 when like it's someone like Jon Jones, like what are you trying to get at? It's like a stupid fine. It's absolutely meaningless to Jon. And I don't know. I feel like just let Jon Jones has done his time for everything else. Just let him off the hook with this one because it's really not that serious. And there's 2 perspectives to every story, especially in this scenario.
Yep. Yeah, we'll wait and see what happens. But my guess is that it's just going to get swept under the rug. He'll pay a
Of
fine, and
course.
then he'll be
Call it a
back in
day.
November to fight Stipe. Uh, there was you made a TikTok about this. There was a French Canadian UFC broadcast. I believe it was during UFC Denver on the Nama Yunus fight, where French Canadian broadcaster kind of went rogue a little bit and reveals to the audience that there's going to be that at the Sphere fight for UFC 306 at the Sphere, Mexican Independence
Yeah.
Day, that the main event will be Ilia Topuria versus Max Holloway, and the co-main will be Merab, or I'm not sure which is the main, which is the co-main. You might be able to clear that up for me. And then the other fight would be Merab versus O'Malley,
Yeah.
John O'Malley, for the bantamweight championship. Before we go any further, Ariel Helwani claims this is incorrect. He laid out the full plan. We'll get to that, but which was supposed to be the main event? I'm sorry, I didn't actually do the full research on that.
I actually don't think it was mentioned. I think they just said
Okay.
both of them would be fighting, but you'd imagine it'd be O'Malley is the main event, and
Yeah,
Topuria and Holloway would be the co-main, just because O'Malley's had a few title defenses, so I feel like he'd be higher up on the championship rankings than Topuria to be the main event.
right.
It's kind of interesting because as a broadcaster, he wouldn't say it unless he was given that information. It's not like he pulled it out of nowhere, but it was probably just unofficial. And they were like, hey, this might get announced today, but they're trying to finalize it. So maybe Ariel's also right, where like they could both be right, like they were trying to do this at the Sphere, but then it doesn't work out. So then Ariel gets that news a couple days later and says, no, this is the actual plan, which I believe it's, what was it? 306 would be O'Malley Merab, and the next one would be Holloway.
307. Yeah. So
Yeah.
here's what I think happened. I think that the announcer knew that O'Malley and Merab were fighting at the Sphere. And then he was having a conversation with somebody where somebody was like, and then they're going to do Topuria Holloway. Right. And then
Mhm.
maybe he interpreted that as like, oh, that means it's going to be 306 as well.
Yeah.
But the thing is like, they're never going to do those two fights together. UFC doesn't do that unless it's like UFC 300 or something. They're not going to do that because Topuria Holloway sells on its own. O'Malley Merab sells on its own. You want to build
Very
fight
true.
cards around those because it's just better business. You can stretch your dollar that way.
Yeah.
And it just wouldn't make sense to do Holloway Topuria at the Sphere for a Spaniard fighting an American for Mexican Independence Day. Wouldn't make a lot of sense. Spain has like a troubled history with conquering Mexico and all that. Like it just wouldn't make a lot of sense if you ask me.
No.
But Ariel Helwani did lay out what is, according to him, the UFC's plan, which is that it would be Merab versus O'Malley, as well as Shevchenko versus Grasso at the Sphere for Mexican
Yeah.
Independence Day. O'Malley is married to a Mexican woman. Merab is very beloved amongst Mexican fans. Obviously, Grasso is a Mexican champion. So that makes a lot of sense. Then UFC 307 would be at Salt Lake City, which is where supposedly Holloway versus Topuria would be. I was hoping that fight would be in Spain, but that does also make sense. Following that, it would be Makhachev versus Makhachev versus Sarukian in Abu Dhabi at 308. Stipe versus Jon Jones at UFC 309 in Madison Square Garden. And then Conor McGregor to end and wrap up the year, UFC 310 in Las Vegas versus Michael Chandler in December. That makes a lot more sense to me.
Yeah. Yeah.
Way more sense to me.
I agree. You know what? This is like kind of off topic, but on topic at the same time. Ilia has always said, he's like, I'm going to sell out like the Bernabeu, which is like the massive stadium in Madrid or whatever. He's like, all of Spain's going to come out to see me. And he's right. Like that probably will happen when time comes. But there's actually a picture, and I wonder if you can pop it up on screen before we post this. But there was like a YouTuber boxing event this past weekend where that event was almost sold out as well.
80,000 people.
Like if these guys are going to sell out an event, yeah, no shit. Ilia Topuria is also going to sell it out, right? So I thought that was super interesting, and obviously price differences play a factor, but still.
So what's funny is, so 85,000 people were there at a Spanish boxing event, and Will Smith performed. Will Smith performed at it. That's how big this thing was. He performed the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air song.
That's hell yeah.
So Conor McGregor did his introductory press conference in Spain today for BKFC, and he brought that up when he was doing it, because it was in reference to Ilia Topuria, or he was then asked about Ilia Topuria because of it, and he was basically just implying that with the rise of bare knuckle, the reason why they were doing this event in Spain is because you can see the appetite for combat sports in Spain. The fact that you can get 85,000 people to an arena for a celebrity boxing event or an influencer boxing event.
Yeah.
What can
whatever
you
it
do
was.
for like a major fight? And I think Conor's right. I think now the problem is could you do it for bare knuckle? Probably not.
I think they could. I'm not gonna lie. Maybe not 80,000 or 85,000 people, but you have to keep in mind that I think Spain, he's right. They have an appetite for just violence, not just combat sports, but like bull rings are like still like, I don't know if that's a proper name for it, but
That might be
are
the most gory
still,
sport in the world, by the way.
it is. And they're still
Yeah.
very active. Like I lived in Spain for 3-ish months.
Yeah.
And like in Barcelona, they have like I don't know, I don't think it's active there anymore, but they have like a giant like stadium just dedicated to like bullfighting. And like the same thing in like other cities across Spain. So now you go to the biggest city, like the capital of Spain. Yeah, they're gonna come out, I think. So maybe not 85,000 people for bare knuckle, but if you get a couple of decent names on there that they don't get to see often, but still have respect for, like a Mike Perry or an Eddie Alvarez, or who knows, maybe Conor when he's done with the UFC, they're gonna show up. That's for sure.
Well, that's what Conor was sort of saying is I just saw your message about the ad read. Yeah, I'll splice it in. Don't worry. I was like, wait, did I forget to do that? Conor was basically talking about during his introductory presser, he was basically implying that he has 2 fights left on his UFC contract, and that he wants to transition over to. He basically implied he wants to fight in bare knuckle.
Yeah.
So Conor McGregor in bare knuckle, A, would just be absolutely batshit crazy. But B, I was
Yeah.
just thinking about who would the potential opponents be for Conor McGregor in a bare knuckle scenario. Who would you want to see Conor fight in bare knuckle?
There's only one right answer, bro. It's the Nate Diaz and Conor McGregor trilogy. I don't see it happening in the UFC. I think they both want to fight again. And I think bare knuckle is a great place to do it because, well, Nate Diaz is the baddest motherfucker. And Conor, if he owns part of BKFC and he knows how massive it would be for the sport to have these two guys fight each other for a third time, I feel like it makes so much sense.
That would be so insane to see
It'd
Nate and
be,
Conor fighting in bare knuckle, especially like in a big arena. That would be wild. You might be right. I still think there's a outside chance that like they both sign like a 1-fight deal with the UFC just to complete the trilogy. Like Dana, might do that for them. There's a chance. But I think that Conor McGregor versus Mike Perry is something that potentially could seriously happen. They've already done a face-off in the ring. Conor basically has already said that Mike is like the biggest star that BKFC has. Conor versus Mike Perry would legitimize the sport. It really would. It would Conor stepping in and fighting bare knuckles biggest star would absolutely put legitimacy to Mike Perry as a star, as a combat sports star, outside of him potentially beating Jake Paul this weekend. Like if he beats Jake Paul this weekend, that absolutely legitimizes him. But like Jake Paul is still considered kind of like iffy as a combat sports athlete. Conor would legitimize it. So I do think that that's possible, although Perry's big. That's a problem.
I agree. I was going to say that the only way I see that fight happening is if Mike beats Jake Paul this weekend. Which
I
is
would
doable.
kind of agree with that.
Yeah. So I guess we'll see what happens. There's still a few fights away. I think
But
Conor's.
Go ahead.
No, I was going to say, I think Conor's like kind of like dream scenario is go fight Michael Chandler, win that fight. Maybe because he wins that fight, he gets propped up to a title shot immediately. Maybe he gets one more fight before that, but that would put him at either 2 or 3 fights to fight for a championship and hopefully win. This is like, again, his perspective. He'd probably want to leave the UFC as a champion and then he'd go to bare knuckle. So I don't see Nate Diaz fitting in there, which is how I see him fitting into bare knuckle at the end. That's all.
Yeah, no, you might be right.
Yeah, but we'll have to see what happens. There's
Like,
so many fights to happen before you can like say, okay, this is making more sense
yeah.
now.
He was mentioning how there's like a lot of that he wants bare knuckle to be a place where UFC fighters after their career or like when they're thinking about leaving the promotion, he doesn't want to see them go to Bellator or to the PFL. He wants to see them go to bare knuckle. He thinks that you can actually build your brand better in bare knuckle than you
Yeah,
could going
because
to one
it's
of these other
different.
promotions. I agree with that. I actually think that you can. You can get like look at Mike Perry, case in point, man. It's just like
Yeah.
yeah.
No,
Anyways,
it's an absolute bizarre sport, and I 100% see. I 100% agree with Connor because it builds the fighters up so much more than any like Bellator or PFL build it up because it's bare knuckle, because it's bloody, because it's gory.
yeah.
But yeah,
Yeah. Sorry, my dog's going crazy while you're giving your take. I don't know if you can hear it.
yeah, I
Otis,
can hear, but
hey,
it's all
Otis,
good.
come on. Otis, let's go. Sorry. Anyways,
All
well,
good. Do you want me to repeat that take? Because I know you can cut
no,
that
no, you're
part out.
good. You're good. You're good.
Okay.
Yeah, no, you're
You're
fine.
good.
Well, we'll wait and see. I want to, I hope it happens. I hope that Conor actually does fight Michael Chandler this year so we can get closer to that. But yeah, either way, it's exciting times. But Adam, thank you so
100%.
much for joining me, bro. What do you got going on with that
Appreciate it,
insider
brother.
betting this week?
We do. We have insider betting premiering. I don't know what I feel like insider betting is going to go up first, but
This might literally happen at the same time for all I know.
it could
Yeah.
be. It could be.
Yeah.
We'll see what
All right.
happens. But next week is big. Next week is big. We have what is it, UFC 304, right? UK
Yep.
baby.
UFC 304, Aspinall versus Blades and Leon versus
Muhammad
Bilal.
versus
So
Leon. Yeah.
hopefully all the fans aren't asleep by the time they take the main event.
Yeah, that 5 a.m. card's crazy.
Anyways, bro. Well, thanks for joining me.
Appreciate it,
next week,
brother.
right?
See you next week.